10 three-time members in baseball. Over 30 players made the team for the second time or more. 14 three-time members in softball made the team. 44 players with multiple selections there. And then four-time softball All-State members, including Charlotte Christian catcher Anna Hindi. It was she was a first-time selection 3 of the 4 years that she made the team. I'm going to bring in J. Mike Blake here, who helps oversee a lot of these All-State teams. J. Mike, it's never easy to go through these baseball, softball teams, not only because there's so many names to choose from. The depth in this state in these two sports in particular is one that I think exceeds a lot of different sports.
Yeah, I think whether you are a sports editor just over one county or a small area, or you're doing what we do, trying to do an all-state team, these are the two hardest sports to kind of pick out. I mean, softball is, to me, the absolute hardest, because everybody you look at hits about 430 or 440 with 30 RBIs and 30 hits. Like, all the stat totals and averages kind of look the same. So you're actually looking at, who you played. You're looking at, maybe OPS or opposing batting average for these pitchers, to just try to get a better sense of what these numbers mean. Also, it doesn't help that for us, if you make a coaches all-state team, you're automatically kind of on our radar and nominated to make our all-state team. Now, no one has to be nominated to make the team, but it does help. However, in softball, the coaches there put 450 girls on their all-state team. So that means we are looking at 450 names automatically, and it creates so much extra work. Sometimes, literally, there are girls in the all-state team. I'm not trying to, take shots at anyone, who have ERAs over 4, who have batting averages under 300, and they are all-state. And I think if you worked out there are not even 450 softball teams in this state, which means if you start for your high school softball team, you have a greater than 10% chance at being on an all-state team at some point in your career. Like, my cousin was a 4-time coaches all-state player. She's very good. She went to Barton and played at Campbell her graduate year, got to play in the regional and the College World Series. But 4 times, whoa, it kind of took away how she definitely earned a spot in those junior and senior years, because she had already made it freshman to sophomore year. So that would be my only thing. With love, softball coaches, let's try to trim down that list now that we can hit the reset button with 8 classifications. Baseball, on the other hand, I don't think it's necessarily as hard as softball. There's some differentiation that happens, but it is the hardest one to make, I think, in any sport. You have guys who are going to be drafted in the major leagues who, in a couple of years after college, who didn't make our team because maybe things just didn't work out their senior year. The season is short. If you are a pitcher, you're only going to take the mound maybe 8 or 9 times. And if you don't have your best stuff on a couple of those nights, all of a sudden your ERA and all these other stats that we kind of look at and sift through, and you're like, hey, you weren't actually as dominant as these other people. And there's so much talent going to all different schools. This year alone, this has never happened for us in our 5 years of doing it. But this year we had 6 guys who were drafted by the major leagues make our team. Only 5 of the 6 were on first team. So so if you do make that team in baseball, even if it's honorable mention, just know your name is with guys who will eventually be drafted and go on to maybe work their way into the majors. I don't think there's too many other sports in the state where you can say there are guys on honorable mention who are going to make it to the league, if you're talking about NFL, NBA, or anything else for that matter. So again, softball, hardest for us to decide and pick. Baseball, the hardest one for the students to make. There were a few guys who we've had over the years who make the first team as a junior, and then senior year, maybe it's partly because they're on everyone's radar, they don't make it. They don't make the team at all their senior year. So those repeat selections definitely earned it. It's not easy to do.
As I said, 30 players were repeat selections on this year's team. And as J. Mike and I have covered in previous episodes as well, it is very difficult to make one of these teams. And with it being, built out by position, if you're a third team catcher, that means you're one of the 6 best catchers in the state, essentially, which is very impressive. And, another thing, as Jim Mike's kind of going through this and breaking this down, it's not entirely a statistical based honor,
Right.
but you have to walk a fine line between, yeah, that kid's off to a Power 4 school and he is doing XYZ, or he got drafted against a kid who, quite frankly, had amazing stats. Like, you have to reward the kids who had phenomenal statistical years, and then you also have to understand where you can slot in the kids who may not have had the year that matches up with what their statistics may or could be, but we kind of just the eye test and we know, and we can see, like, okay, that kid is one of the best kids in the state. So it's a mix of the two. I think a good example, J Mike, of what J Mike was saying is like Tyler Baird, who pitched at Huff. He was a selection this year to the team of Vanderbilt commit. If you hear a Vanderbilt baseball commit, you're like, yeah, that kid's legitimate. He got invited out to the MLB draft combine in Arizona prior to the draft. He went undrafted, but a year ago he didn't make the All-State team because he didn't have the numbers for it. He had a high ERA, and it just was not a good year for him. And then he turns it around this year, puts together a sub-1 ERA, and you're like, oh, there's the Vandy committing him.
Yep.
And makes the team this year around. So, like, again, he was a borderline, last year we were talking about it. Does Tyler Baird make the team? He, ultimately was on the outside looking in on last year's team, but it's not because we don't think he's good. It's just there's so many names that you have to get in here that you're like, can we put a kid with a 4 ERA on here? Even though we know he's going to XYZ school. But luckily, in the case of a kid like Baird, he rebounded nicely.
Yeah, you have to draw the line somewhere, right? Between, this person is talented but didn't have the numbers versus the guy who had the numbers, who honestly, you may actually find yourself in a few years, that guy who had great numbers, he goes to a junior college and then he transfers, and all of a sudden he's being drafted out of a Power 4 school in a couple of years. So it is, like you said, kind of trust your eyes a little bit and also kind of meld these things together. The reason stats do matter, however, is I've known of all-state teams in other sports in previous years. I mean, I'm talking like a decade ago, that would basically, their preseason all-state team was going to be their end-of-season all-state team, and they did not do the research to know that some of their guys were injured after the first couple of weeks and didn't play. So they would have, congratulations to all-state player, the safety from, somewhere in the Sand Hills, and it's like, well, that safety only played 3 games. You don't know that because you didn't look up any stats. That's why we do our homework at HighSchoolOT and try to make sure everyone has the things that back up their selection. Sometimes it catches us by surprise or off guard. We weren't expecting the numbers to be so good or the numbers to not be as good. But we're always trying to look at everything we possibly can so that our all-state team is as authentic and authoritative as it can possibly be.
That is J. Mike Blake breaking down the HighSchoolOT baseball and softball all-state teams. If you have not gone and checked them out, they are on HighSchoolOT right now. We're